Okay, so within that last segment, we just went over a little bit about his origin from the comics mainly, because that is going to be pretty crucial, because Marvel does like to take every now and then some pieces of information from it, put a little spin on it, and then dive into kind of their new origin. So with that, we're now going to move into the trailer. Now, we'll probably still be going over some different like character arcs, some backgrounds from there, because some of these characters are, we're not entirely sure who they are quite yet, so we will need to go over some different origins. But we'll also be going over some of our favorite details that we may have noticed, those that others have put out as well. We kind of like to take those, put a little spin on it, or even re-emphasize why we believe it's going to be, why it's a valid theory. So, Matt, do you have anything to start off from that you've noticed, or that someone else may have said that you'd love to discuss from the most recent, from like the main trailer of Moon Knight?
Yeah, I'd like to know if they're going to feature all of his main personalities from the actual comic books. It was unclear in the trailer, or if it's just going to be. I mean, that I guess that is one of his core characteristics, is his dissociative identity disorder. So I think they're going to have to. But it's only a 6-episode series, so I'm just wondering what the allocation is going to be between his different personas.
Yeah, no, it's really weird, because from what we know, we have the 4 identities that they've been provided. We have Stephen Grant, who in the comic book is a multimillionaire, but this one he seems to be a shopkeeper, or what's the gift shop keeper at the museum or the gallery, whichever one it is. We'll probably dive into that pretty soon. And then we also have Mark Spector, who we've seen as, I believe, who we've seen probably in the most recent features. And then in addition to that, we have Moon Knight himself, who we've definitely seen going from, Mark Spector, Stephen Grant, into the superhero form. And finally, Mr. Knight, who's that detective that wears a plain white suit. So we're not really sure if they're going to include Jake Lockley at all, who's the taxi cab driver. But even then, we have Stephen Grant, who's a little bit different from the multimillionaire that's supposed to be there. So very, very interesting as to see how that is going to play out, possibly. So I think from that is a pretty good transition into something I'd love to discuss from the trailer, actually, is those different identities. And so he's someone that suffers from dissociative identity disorder or split personality. So exactly, is he able to, it does not seem like he's able to control going from, let's say, person A to person B, and vice versa. And so from the trailer, for most of it, he is Stephen Grant. And so for him to go from like one to the other, something that I noticed really right after the trailer was aired, that a few other people have pointed out as well, but still I think it's really important to discuss, is that I think that every time he sees a reflection of himself, whether it's in a mirror, whether it's in a very clear glass window, he battles with another identity of himself, and that's possibly what gives him the ability to, let's say, turn to another form. And there are a number of instances, that replicate this. So most notably, there are flashes of Moon Knight that we see at the beginning of the trailer in the bathroom mirror, whenever he turns on and off the light. It's also kind of in the end, whenever he's in the gallery or the museum. There's one where you kind of see him looking into one certain exhibit, and it has his reflection in that glass. So as he keeps moving, the glass reflection stays right there. And then finally, in the bathroom, whenever he actually transforms into Moon Knight and starts really beating the shit out of some supernatural creature, I mean, it's a bathroom, so there's this wide mirror right there, which I believe, in these instances, allows him to transform into these different characters, or whenever he kind of moves back into his Stephen Grant self and he's shocked by what he's doing, there's always some indication that there's either a mirror or some glass around that allows him to see a reflection of himself. And it's possibly why at the very end we kind of see him punching or kicking a mirror, as if to try to get rid of those different identities there, which I thought was really cool and could possibly be a way as to how he is able to accurately, transform into, or move from personality A to personality B.
Well done. Well done.
Yeah, that's that was the biggest one that I did notice kind of on my own. um, and it was brought up by other people. Unfortunately, I thought I was pretty unique in that sense,
I think we, I
but
think we can,
not quite. Uh,
I, I think we can also safely say that this is probably going to be one of the most violent characters we've seen to date,
uh,
which
I'm so for it too. I absolutely love that.
I feel like might um, give us the appetite for a someone like a Deadpool to come in later in the future, because
Yeah.
I've always, I could ask the same question with Moon Knight as I've asked with Deadpool. I wonder how they're going to integrate them into the films with characters who, like don't who have a brand of superheroism that isn't as violent or maybe might be more kid friendly. So it'd be interesting to see how they like manage those interactions and plot points when
Yeah.
when both sides of characters are involved.
Yeah, and like I really hope they do. And there's definitely been like a few groups as well that he's been brought into in the comics. Holy shit, it's snowing outside right now.
Is it
Sorry,
actually?
it is snowing in Pittsburgh. Oh my god, what is it? It's almost April and it's snowing. It's not even. We're not even out west.
New York.
Oh
No,
my
it's
god.
that's crazy.
This is ridiculous. Get me back to DC. So anyways, yeah, I think it would be very cool to have that mix and for them to be brought in. I think, because he's kind of on like the rated R style for Marvel purposes, I think he's going to be part of a group later on down the road that will probably be more on the rated R side of things, which we'll probably talk about in another segment to see how he's going to play out in the future. But one of the other things,
What's it called?
the what?
We're talking about the Sons of
Oh yeah, the Midnight Suns. Yeah, yeah,
Midnight
yeah.
Suns,
Yeah, that's a little, I'd say that's a little pretext to, what's to come, because that is a very, very cool group. And he's also part of a few other ones that have actually already been brought into the MCU. But that's for a little bit later on. And I see, like, before we go to the next one, because I think as we're going through this right now, this is the Sunday before Moon Knight the Saturday before Moon Knight drops, which is going to be Wednesday. So we have also we have not seen any of the different actual shows yet. I think they already had the premiere. We have not been invited to the premiere. We don't have that ability. We don't have enough traction to get.
It doesn't mean we won't be there.
What?
I said that doesn't mean we won't be there.
Doesn't mean someone can't sneak us in under a trench coat or something.
I think if we dress up as Moon Knight, they'll have to let us in. Because what if we're actually Oscar Isaac?
We find the theater, we go there dressed in like kind of either a white suit with a mask over our head. Nothing can go wrong from there with a mask.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. You dress the part, you play the part. So
gotta be canceled in 10 seconds.
That's right. Next time you see us, it's going to be probably on the news somewhere, probably with our mugshots.
We're here at the New York State Penitentiary. Back at it again with another Marvel video.
That will go viral, but not for the correct reasons, unfortunately will say. But I think with that, so a lot of these we are doing beforehand. And so, obviously not all these are going to be correct. And so I think transitioning into that, there's still for us, for those who have not seen the show quite yet, who have not invited to the premiere, that still have to speculate exactly who the antagonists, who the villains are for this series. And there's going to be really two characters that we know of that are part of the trailer or the different features that we will discuss. The first one is Ethan Hawke's character. He's confirmed as the main antagonist, but exactly who is he? Now, from the trailer, based on the different subtitles, his title is known, or his name is known as Arthur Harrow. Okay, so in the comics, Arthur Harrow is a little bit different, not only from how he appears within the trailer, but also physically as well. He is kind of a disfigured scientist that has the left half of his face is kind of paralyzed. And so he looks very different. And he is a scientist that tries to go about curing people's pain. And mainly it's for a lot of selfish reasons in order to heal himself. And so this is actually whenever Moon Knight is brought in. But we only see Arthur Harrow one time within the comics. And this is during that one comic strip whenever he is being put up for a Nobel Prize, but some people are having some doubts as to exactly how he is progressing so fast in his research. He turns out to actually have been using humans for trials instead of animals, let's say, which is how he's able to progress so rapidly. Moon Knight, and there's another doctor, I forgot off the top of my name, go over, I believe it's to South America as well, in order to put a stop to the end of this. And Haro tries to get a few of the people that he's put up for these experiments to fight him while he's able to escape. And he escapes to another kind of evil think tank known as Omnium. Now, that is the last we hear of those two from the Moon Knight series and just in all of Marvel Comics. So it's kind of great that Marvel is able to and now include this character because it gives them a lot of freedom, because you're not going to have these angry comic book fans coming from Feige's throat saying, hey, you didn't really do this part, you didn't really play out to this thing or to this. And because there's just, such limited options to really, where you can go down, it opens up a lot of different possibilities for who Arthur Haro could be. And they tend to, Marvel likes to do that, kind of putting a spin on different characters and really ones that are not well known. So that is the comic book version of Arthur Haro. There's another theory that he is just kind of the leader of the cult of Khonshu. Now, Khonshu is the god that kind of that allows Mark to serve as his avatar. And there's a brief period within the comics where the cult of Khonshu kind of resents and go against Mark Spector because they believe Khonshu chose the wrong avatar. So they believe that Khonshu chose Mark incorrectly to serve as him, and they believe it should be someone else. Now, there are some indications that possibly Ethan Hawke is serving as kind of like the leader of this cult, and he wants to envelop the powers of Khonshu and does not believe it should be Mark. And that will kind of explain a lot of the different, I'd say, details that are presented within the trailer, which make it seem that Ethan Hawke's character, Arthur, knows about the pain that he's going through because he's probably studied the books, the ancient books, and knows about these different avatars. So knowing what Mark is going through, that's kind of a vague possible description of how things add up. But I'd say the most reasonable, logical explanation is that Arthur's character is actually known as Patient 86, and this is the last character known as the Sun King. So Patient 86 was a character from the Ravencroft Institute, which is kind of a mental hospital for the insane, kind of your equivalent to Arkham Asylum from DC, but now it's called Ravencroft over here in Marvel. And there are a few other notes about Patient 86, known as the Sun King. And his story begins, we don't really know a whole lot about Patient 86, which is possibly why they're now able to designate that patient as being known as Arthur Haro. But regardless, he goes to a psychiatrist within Ravencroft that has worked with Mark Spector or Moon Knight in the past. Now, because of those similarities that the psychiatrist has seen between the two characters, she gives him some different, I'd say, books and knowledge about some Egyptian gods, one of those being the elder god Atum. Now, the elder god Atum, the elder gods are those that were really the first ones placed on Earth. So we do have Chthon, who has ties to the Darkhold, and then now also Atum. So now these things are possibly starting to make sense if these elder gods are in fact going to be in play. And Atum, similar to the god Khonshu, decides to choose an avatar for himself later on down the road, and this is who the person decides to become as the Sun King. So that is how Patient 86 kind of designates himself as the Sun King. And kind of throughout histories, you have the different avatars of Moon Knight and the Sun King that battle each other. And so there's a strong possibility that Ethan Hawke, knowing kind of as a more experienced Sun King, has been up for way longer than Mark Spector Moon Knight, kind of knows about these Egyptian rituals, and from there is most likely either trying to, again, put a stop to Moon Knight and the god Khonshu, or is trying to absorb his powers, whatever it may be. But I believe that's going to be the main villain who they will be fighting, which goes along with the comics of those two fighting over the different centuries. And I think before I kind of put a pause on it, it's really important to note that the god Khonshu is actually the son of the elder god Atum there. So it's kind of a father-son little battle that's been going on over the past few centuries with their different avatars there. Now, the Sun King, sorry, the last thing I will mention is that the Sun King, another reason why it's most reasonable that this is Ethan Hawke's character, is that he also establishes a cult along the way, kind of a following. And from the trailer, there's a number of instances where we see people almost bowing down to Ethan Hawke's character and to Arthur Harrow there. And I believe that they'll probably take their little adventure and their following over to Egypt. They'll probably be returning to that place sooner or later. But I believe those are probably the most three likely possibilities. My most strong favor is that Arthur Harrow, Ethan Hawke, is going to be none other than the Sun King. It's just the names is going to be a little bit different, a little interchangeable there. So, Matt, it just looks like I put you through like a 2-hour lecture on linear algebra.
Dude, if only they offered this as a degree in college.
This might have been the only one I could actually get more than a C- in.
We would have been on Dean's list, President's list, everything.
Yeah, I was on Dean's list for a while, but it's not the good kind. It's because I TP'd her
hit
house.
list.
Yeah.
Just the hit
list. That's the one.
Yeah, the hit is in parentheses.
That's the one. So are there any questions that you have from that? Any like other additional notes you may have seen about these different characters? Really Arthur Harrow, because that's the only one that I talked about.
I guess if you have any knowledge about this, could you elaborate on any interactions between Moon Knight and other characters in the MCU that have been seen in the comics?
Yeah, so one of the other ones, primarily that I believe we've had a little hint at, is going to be one of the women that we see in the series. Is her name, I believe, is going to be Layla. That is her first name. I can't really pronounce her last name. But the one person that's calling Mark with on the cell phone there, or sorry, Stephen Grant at the very end of the trailer, and says, Mark, where have you been? That is Layla that's on the phone.
Hold the phone. Now hold the phone.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're alive. What's wrong with you, Mark?
Why did you call me Mark?
Now, for a while, many people thought that it was Marlene. And if you remember from the last video, kind of on the origin of Mark Spector in Moon Knight, Marlene is a particular love interest for Mark, and is actually the daughter of that one archaeologist that was killed by Raoul Bushman. So they kind of develop a personal history with each other. And it seems that she's not going to be taking the name of Marlene. She'll probably be going as Layla. It is an Egyptian actress, I'm pretty sure, that is playing her. And so I think from there, it would probably make sense in order to put some pieces together. She's referring to Stephen Grant as Mark. And then she also knows a bit about probably the history that goes on with some of these different archaeological digs. It certainly looks like the setting will be taking place over there. So there are a lot of signs that are pointing to her kind of being a replacement for Marlene's character from the comics, Marlene Allron, to be specific. So I think she'll probably be taking over that mantle and kind of serving as either that love interest or kind of a good friend of Mark, who obviously they're probably going to meet up at some point within the series. But that was actually a good question because that was the other character I wanted to discuss. And so I think from there, before we talk about the future, one of the last things to discuss, I think, is going to be a little bit about the different museums and where like the setting of all this kind of takes place, I think, at all. So one of the big theories is that there's going to be some crossover between Dane Whitman's character from Eternals and then also Stephen Grant, because they both work in like a gallery or a museum. So one of the things after doing a little bit of digging, and this is something that I have to I had to look up because I didn't really fully understand, and I have to give credit where credit's due. So assuming the people at New Rockstars who are that channel, they're able to find some details that I just could never find in an eternity if I was given a few hours to find everything that they did. Definitely would not be able to do so. But fortunately, they dive into some theories that are very good, and they pick out some that we have to note. So one is that you may notice that Stephen Grant is the storekeeper within like the gift shop for one of the museums. Now, they're able to point out from the channel that Dane Whitman works at the British, I believe he works at the British Museum in London there. I'm pretty sure. I might have to do some more digging on that. But Stephen Grant, it's very unclear as to where he works. It says, like, on the top within the trailer, it says the National Gallery in London, which coincidentally is only like 2 miles from the History Museum there in London as well, from where Dane Whitman and Cersei kind of work at. And so not too far from each other, possibly some interaction going on a little bit later, maybe as a cameo. But their structure itself is actually that of Budapest Museum, and that's also, I think, an art museum as well. So it's very unclear as to why you have kind of like some history, historical artifacts are being presented within a gallery, within an art gallery, which is what the National Gallery is there in London. Also, Budapest Gallery is as well. But they'll probably just be looking at doing some remodeling in order to make it a history museum. And then, so it's not going to be the same as the one where Black Knight and Moon Knight are going to be at. It's just coincidentally in the same location, but not the exact same. So that is kind of the other possible interaction, maybe as some tying some things in together from other projects. But then also the character with Marlene Alron, it is important to bring up because she was very important in the comics. And so I think she'll probably be played by, go by the name Layla in this case.
Shit, man.
Matthew, I'll tell you right now, if I could do the amount of reading and video watching I've done on these topics, it's definitely added up to more research than I ever done for all of my senior year.
You went deep.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
No, you do it so the viewers don't have to.
That's right. Yeah, it's very interesting, and hopefully that provided a general understanding of kind of the trailer and some of the most important things that we really wanted to point out within the trailer, because there are a few little niches that even they might seem minor. I think they'll play a larger part within the actual series itself. So those are definitely the biggest hitting points that we'll probably talk about. Matt, unless you have something else you'd like to mention that you may notice from the trailer before we move on to our last segment, which we'll be talking about the future of Moon Knight.
Let's take us out.
All right, ready? We're now moving on to the last segment. But before we do, let's snap away this one. All right.
Not as good as the last one.
Yeah.